I'm Kelly.
Hi, I'm Jamie.
And this is the BodySmartPodcast.
We're going to be talking about if you have an unhealthy relationship with food and what you can do about it. Right, so let's kick off today's one. We've got heal your relationship with food and fix your bad eating habits.
It's a biggie.
It is a biggie. Have you ever struggled with your relationship with food?
I have a huge appetite. Like I eat like a full-grown man.
Right.
So yeah, I eat a lot of food and I always moved enough to counter it.
Yeah.
And then when I didn't move as much, I did have to learn to adjust.
Yeah.
You know, like I can't just eat 8 pieces of toast. No normal human does that. So yeah, probably not the healthiest relationship with food previously, but not in a sort of emotional sense, I suppose. Definitely have emotionally eaten,
Yeah.
but not, you know, in a really problematic way. You?
I had similar when I stopped personal training. I had to like reduce my calories by about 1,500 a day.
Which is massive.
Yeah,
Did you struggle?
It took a bit of readjustment. Yeah, just because you get so used to eating a certain way.
Yeah, and your routine and how full your tummy is.
Yeah, I went from doing like 25 to 30,000 steps a day, demonstrating exercises, showing exercises, to being pretty sedentary, and I had to like start planning in for walks because I was doing like 1,000 to 2,000 steps a day, that was a weird concept for me to plan to go for a walk. Like I'd never had to consider that, and then the change in the energy balance. But yeah, I've not really ever struggled too much with emotional eating. If I get massively stressed, my appetite goes. And I've got the awareness of that now, and I will actually force myself to eat.
Yeah.
Because I know if I don't eat, my energy levels will drop and I'll feel worse the next day. But when I first started getting into like health and fitness, I had like I have to clean eat to get in shape. And that was kind of the message back then. It was about
that word, clean
eating.
Like all other food is dirty.
Oh yeah, so I would eat just like the driest of the dry foods. You know, everything that had to be. You know, I'd have like oats, but I'd have oats with like, what would be put on oats? Like some sort of pepper.
Not in my world.
What's the, cinnamon. So I'd just have like oats and cinnamon.
Oats and pepper.
Yeah, oats and pepper. Well, with water. I remember one time I made oats with egg whites. And it was with...
You made a cake.
No, it's oats with egg, but you just like meant to mix them in, and that was just because it was like egg whites were just pure protein and all that type of stuff. And I remember just like you meant to mix it in the microwave constantly so the eggs didn't form, the egg whites. So I ended up just getting it out, and I had this like half-formed egg white bowl with oats, and I was like eating it.
Did you eat it? Oh.
Yeah, I was like 17 at the time, and my mum walking into the kitchen like, "What?" I'm like balking while I'm eating this, and she's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm in my mind, I'm like, "This is what it takes to get in shape."
I feel like a lot of trainers have gone through that like process of eating, you know, you see that like plain rice, broccoli, chicken, and no deviation from that, and taking your own little Tupperware to your mate's house instead of eating what they've got to offer. And I think I've seen it go full circle now. And I don't know if it's an age thing, because, you know, there's lots of trainers. Who's the James Smith PT and the Neat Up 24/7 people? They've gone through that, you know, have to have 6-pack abs and, you know, really showing that like this is how a trainer looks. And I think it's just as they've aged, they're like, this is not, you know, like relax a bit, live your life. And now they're showing a different side of it. But I don't know if that's just a cycle that all trainers go through, most trainers.
Maybe, yeah. You know, like but back when, because I was about 17, and it's just like 14, 15 years ago.
It's when your looks really, really matter to you.
I just started getting into fitness and training, and the information that was about around them was kind of that message. That's what got pushed in the gyms when you'd speak to other people. You know, it was that chicken and rice, and I used to eat like sweet potatoes and tuna, and I'd put like nothing on them. It'd take me like 3 glasses of water to eat some of my lunches because it was that dry. And it was a super bland diet. I cut alcohol out. I cut caffeine out. And yeah, so to an extent, I did in my mind start to label foods as like, well, this is good and this is bad. And like I did start to form that relationship with food. Until I actually met a guy called Lex Griffin. I actually travelled up to Manchester to see him. And this is first when flexible dieting started to come about.
Yeah.
And I've gone through a similar journey as some of our clients do. Is he was, you know, taught me about calories, taught me about macros, that I can eat, you know, 80% of nutrient dense foods and whole foods, get plenty of nutrients in my diet, but I can have 20% of a little bit of what I love. So, you know, then I start eating like Mars bars and chocolate and factor in some of these foods, loving Cocoa Pops and all this type of stuff.
Yes, great food.
And it didn't affect. In fact, I actually felt like I started to look better, and I felt better as well, and got that aspect of some of the foods that I enjoyed back, and socializing a little bit more too. But then I also would remember going into the gym, and because I'm seen as like a fit guy or a trainer at that point, people are like, you're meant to be showing a good example here. What are you doing eating a Mars bar? And I got that for years.
Really?
Oh yeah. Like I remember walking in the gym with a McDonald's once, and the backlash I got off like the staff and the reception, and I was just like, it's fine. I was like, it's not like I eat this food all the time. I just fancy the McDonald's today.
It's actually showing a better example, and I think that's what's wonderful about our coaches. Like, I don't know a single coach with us that eats in that really restrictive way, and they wouldn't coach with us if they did, because that's not, we practice what we preach. And if people are looking at our Instagram, they'll see us on the beers on a night out, just normal people that have managed to factor in being really healthful on the whole, but also enjoying life.
Yeah. And I think sometimes you have to go through a bit of that to get to the other side and to realize it. I know when I've coached so many clients and I'm like, oh yeah, you can eat pizza and lose weight and you can do this. And I think they just look at me like, double Dutch, like, well, not double Dutch, just look at me like, what are you saying? Like, well, there's just no belief that can happen. And it's not often until they go and do it themselves and factor it in and see that they don't gain a ton of weight, or if they're still looking to lose weight, they still lose weight. And it's like, just ate pizza this weekend and I've eaten chocolate every day and I've still lost weight. And it's just like, oh, right, maybe there's something to this. And it just starts to change your approach and your mindset towards food. But yeah, I would say that's probably the worst I was with food, especially when I started taking, I used to take my own tea bags round to people's houses.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was called Red Bush tea bags. It was a herbal tea. I just wouldn't have coffee or tea or anything like that, because I thought like caffeine was bad as well. I just needed to be, as clean as it can be.
Wow.
Yeah.
But you can't keep that up forever.
I mean, some people do, but it's just like, at what cost? Everything does have a cost, doesn't it? It's like
everything has a cost.
And at what cost? And for me, I was a young lad at that point, and it was having an impact on my social life. And it's not like I always just want to cave to sort of peer pressure around certain things, but it was like, what was the trade-off, or what was the cost at that point?
Yeah, and you have to figure out whether you're willing to give that trade.
Yeah, like being 8-9% body fat and being shredded, that wasn't as important to me as trying to find a happy medium and a balance with it, even though that's what I believed it was before that.
Yeah, and balance is what most people are seeking.
Yeah.
You don't, for anything, being at one end of the spectrum or the other, you have to give so much up to be at either end of the spectrum, whether that is, I eat everything that I want, regardless of what that does for my health or my mind or whatever. If you are at that end of the spectrum, you lose out on a lot of other stuff. Your physical capability of doing certain things. I always circle back to clients who are like, my knees don't hurt anymore. I can go to work and come back at the end of the day as a physician and I'm not in agony.
Yeah.
Like, when you're looking at what do you give up, you're looking at that sort of lifestyle where you think, I want to have it all, but you're still giving something up, and you're giving up a lot of, and we keep circling back to that word freedom. Yeah. Your freedom to live your best life. You can eat whatever you want, but you give something up. Yeah. And then at the other end of the spectrum,
you give a lot of. Yeah.
So much. And I think so many people lose who they are as a person because that gradual, forgetting who you are, not doing the things that you want to do, not sort of taking opportunities or risks or whatever. You start living this really limited life. And that's why when we try and describe what we do in coaching and how it transforms people's lives, it's really hard to put into words because it touches everything in their life. Everything.
Yeah. I think as well as a lot of people will perceive really like fit people, healthy people, and like, oh, maybe they just don't like food as much as me.
I freaking love food.
And it's just like, that just isn't the case at all. Like, I think we're all foodies by nature, and we definitely love food and eat a lot of food, and you can eat a lot of food when you're at your goal and you've learned to maintain and sustain, and there are no foods off limit. Like, yeah, it's I think that's a perceived thing. I was in the the gym I go to the other day, and one of the trainers walked past as I was getting a coffee, and I was like putting a sugar in my coffee, and he was like, "Thought you'd be setting a better example there, mate." I was just like, it's just one sugar in a coffee.
Yeah.
But even just little things like that. But no, that isn't the case.
Do you know, I've started to realise that my daughter dances when she eats, and she's learnt that from me, because I'm like, I'm so happy I got this food. And she's in her high chair,
Yeah. But today's very much about, your relationship with food. And we wanted to go through, or I've got down here 11 signs that you may have an unhealthy relationship with food. So I'm going to read them out. So number one, we've got, you feel shame or guilt when you eat a certain food, or you eat more than you feel you should. Number two is certain foods are quote unquote off limits. Number three, you tend to overeat without realizing. Number four, you find yourself eating when you're not hungry. Number five, you find yourself eating in response to emotions like disappointment, anger, stress, nervousness, or excitement. Number six, calories or macros determine your food choices or how good your diet is each day. Number seven, you've tried numerous diets without success. Number eight, food choices determine the quality or success of your day. Number nine, daily food choices are considered a reflection of who you are. Number 10, you avoid eating around others. And number 11, you have anxiety or stress before events where food will be served.
Now, I agree with most of those.
Yeah.
But not all of them.
And I would say that's, I think if you're listening to that list and it's like tick, 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 then yeah, that's something to be, concerned about.
Yeah,
but if there's maybe, one or two on there, or a couple on there, and you feel like you still have quite a healthy, balanced relationship with food, then I would say that that's probably okay, because having, let's say, some certain foods that are off limits, well, you might know that certain foods just don't agree with you. You don't feel your best after them, or you struggle to stop once you eat one. And maybe having certain foods that are off limits, because well, hey, if I eat like a handful of M&Ms, I'm probably going to eat the whole pack and then something else. Or just having certain foods that don't agree with your gut that well, don't make you feel your best afterwards. So, having certain foods that are off limits, that's almost like a respect to yourself.
Oh, God, yeah. And I think that eating well in a way that makes you feel good is a form of self-respect. And when you're not honouring that, it's, showing disrespect for yourself, a lack of value for yourself, a lack of you thinking that you're worthy. And, because I say a lot of the time, you wouldn't go out and purposefully make yourself feel like crap. Like, people don't do that. But often we do with food. We know if we eat that whole pizza and we eat beyond our fullness, and we sort of banking on the fact we're going to wake up in the morning feeling a little bit crappy.
Yeah.
You don't really do that in any other area of your life, but we often do it with food.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think we've all been guilty of, like, you can go out for a meal, or you can even just be having a meal yourself, and it's as if you have this second stomach. So maybe you have a starter, maybe you just have a main, and you're pretty full. You've eaten probably maybe a little bit more than you should. But then the dessert menu comes out, and it's as if you've just got a second stomach for ice cream.
Si made me eat the second half of my burger yesterday, and I was well full, but it was delicious.
Yeah.
And it's, if you're doing that frequently, that's problematic.
Of course.
If you're doing that every now and then, it's probably okay.
It's okay.
Would it be better if you didn't? Probably, but that burger was nice.
And I think that's what it comes down to, isn't it? Like moderation and understanding what balance looks like for you.
Yeah, and what you do on the whole is what you get on the whole.
Yeah.
It's not that one occasion where you do something that then transforms into something else. We are what we repeatedly do.
Yeah, what we do the majority of the time, not
every now and
whatever the opposite is of the majority. So number 7, and I think a lot of people would relate to this, is like, you've tried numerous diets without success. And I would say that's pretty much every woman I've ever spoken to.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say that means you have an unhealthy relationship with food. You just don't know how to do it, or you have struggled to apply what you've learned, which is normal.
Yeah, I would argue that slightly and say, if you've done numerous diets without success, I think you can start to form an unhealthy relationship with food, because
and yourself
because you've had such a lack of success. Does that mean you're going to have an unhealthy relationship with food for the rest of your life? No, like that can definitely be changed. I think probably the diets and the fads and the media that you've maybe consumed have influenced that in a really, really big way. And you need to go and find something that's gonna be like the polar opposite of that and actually lead you towards success.
Yeah, it's important.
It is definitely important.
Success is the aim of the game. And failure, because you can't have success without failure.
Yeah. You have anxiety or stress before events where food will be served.
That's a huge red flag.
Yeah.
Huge red flag. Because if you have that level of anxiousness and you can't deviate from your plan, that's a problem. And you should seek help for that.
Okay. I think some of our clients do have this, especially when they are looking to lose weight or in a fat loss phase and they're trying to lose weight because maybe it's new to begin with. It's like, oh, well, I need to make my numbers fit and I need to get this all to be right or to be quote unquote perfect.
It's a real fear of, I don't want to mess this up again. And, I've done all this amazing stuff and I'm getting these amazing results. And I'm now fearful that when I go and do this, it's going to, flip that upside down.
Yeah.
That's really easy to turn around because you put in the work and you realize that it doesn't ruin everything.
Yeah.
So if seeing that success when you're working through it stops that level of anxiety, that's great. If that continues and builds, that is really problematic.
Yeah. Because I would say like a lot of our coaches will want our clients to go and do that because they'll want to challenge that mindset and challenge that fear and set them up for success. And even if it doesn't go as successful as maybe they would both like, there's always so many lessons in that for next time. And
Huge.
And that's the point, that there will be a next time and a next time and a next time and a next time.
Yeah, and if you don't learn to manage it, if you can't manage your weekends aren't going to stop. They're coming every week.
Yeah.
And we do something called Win the Weekend, really trying to set the client up for success. How has the week gone? What have you learned? What have you got going on this weekend? And we have that real community vibe of like, how are we going to manage this weekend so that you can have the best of both worlds and you can go out and enjoy yourself. But come Monday, you aren't really annoyed at the choices that you made and the outcome of that. You want to come Monday and be like, that went well, or something happened off of plan and I learned this from it.
Yeah.
And that's where those conversations with your coach come in really, really handy because your coach knows how to direct that conversation. We've done this with hundreds and thousands of women and, you know the right questions to ask to get the client to be like, oh, right. Because, you can tell people the answers, but people respond better and replicate that better when they figure the answer out for themselves. So
I think a big way of getting past this is to just own your decisions. I think a lot of people will go into the weekend and they'll be like, oh, they maybe use the word try, and I know you say about me being Yoda sometimes, but that is a Yoda quote, which like there is no try, there is only do or do not. And a lot of people will go into the weekend and say, oh, I'm gonna try to be healthy this weekend, let's stay on track. I mean, it's kind of like, well, if the stars align and everything's perfect, then you would. But if a few things come up that give you a little bit of friction, then maybe you wouldn't. And then when people deviate, they feel bad about it or they feel guilty. But then they don't own that decision. They kind of sit in it. And I think even if let's say it's a Saturday and you decide to go out and something happens and you know what, you decide at that moment, like you want to have a good night out, you want to enjoy it, you want to eat up more food, maybe have a couple more drinks. Like, don't then get up the next day and then feel bad about that decision. Be like, that was my choice. I'm going to own that decision. Did I create the outcome that I wanted? If it was to have a good night, then yes, you did. And if you didn't, if you would have rather not done that, then it's kind of like, right, okay, I need to reflect on that situation. If that happens again, how can I learn from it? How can I grow from it to create a different outcome next time?
I think reflection is so normal for us in sort of the coaching world and as people that relatively have our shit together.
Yeah.
But for other people, like that concept of reflecting on what has happened or, planning to not have that exact same situation happen again is a really alien concept. We are hugely busy as, fulfilling everything in our lives, careers, children, friends, family, whatever it is. We're so busy that I think taking the time to reflect would just be really alien to a lot of people. So we say it like it's something that everyone does. And we know that it's not.
Well, I mean, if you look at your job, for example, people have appraisals, they have monthly reviews, your upline or your manager will review your work, you'll review your own work. Like, you're always constantly reviewing your own work to look for those micro improvements or changes of how to get better. And it's just like, And, until you maybe get to a level where you feel like super confident with what you're doing. And even then you still do that. But if there's something like food that you're really struggling with, it makes sense to have, a reflection plan or something at some time or some place that you reflect on why you're not achieving the outcomes that you want.
Yeah. And that's really interesting. We often find that people have the skills or the tools that they're using somewhere else in their life that they don't use in another place of their life where it would be really handy. And it's almost like that, oh yeah, I do already do that. I just move that skill across.
Yeah.
And even that's an alien concept. And, you might have a conversation with someone who feels completely out of control about something. And then you're talking about their job.
Yeah.
And you're like, have you noticed how you do that at your job? And they're like, I do that. And that self-belief starts to build because they're already showing that they can do it. They're just doing it somewhere else. And you just shift that focus.
It's a very different conversation to have than what's normally pushed, isn't it, when it comes to diets and nutrition?
Yeah, and it's really nice to show someone that they're already capable of something because, most of us are. We just don't know where to direct that and how to, because you do have to tweak it slightly in a different environment, but that's fairly easily done when you know how, or you have someone on your team has your back that can help you. For
sure. So somebody who come up as quite controversial in the past sort of year was Victoria Beckham. So there's a line here from David Beckham where he said his wife only eats grilled fish, steamed vegetables. She will very rarely deviate from that. And the footballer star revealed that the Spice Girls has eaten the same meal every day since he met her more than 25 years ago.
See, that to me is madness. Like that for me is a miserable way to live. But you had a really interesting take on this.
Well, I mean, she's even stated here, Victoria enjoys eating healthy snacks, including a fruit on her birthday cake. She has a fruit birthday cake. And it's, for some people, like I even know I've started to do this even with some of my clothes, as you can tell, I'm all in black. But, sometimes like less choice can be easier. There's less
freeing.
Yeah, there's less decisions to make. It's like you just know what you're having, and if you enjoy the food and it tastes good to you and you're healthy, like you're not harming anyone, other people can look at that because they have different beliefs around what success with their diet looks to them, or they enjoy food in a different way. But like who are we to judge in that sense? Like if that works for her, she's happy, she's healthy, and she enjoys those foods, is that really a problem?
Yeah, I suppose as if she enjoys it because it gets her the outcome that she wants, and she has felt that pressure from a media sense. You don't know what is going on in someone's life, in someone's head, and you can only look at it and sort of piece together your own story. So you never really know.
You do never really know. And she grew up in the 90s sort of era with the Spice Girls. Trend. Yeah, and it was very like being skinny was on point. Or on point was like was very much the trend.
I hate this beyond belief. I don't know at what point in time women's bodies became a trend. Like your body is not a trend.
Your body is not a trend. No.
It's like it's wild that one day it's to be skinny and that the next year it's like to have a really muscular physique, and you're not just like changing your pair of clothes. This is your freaking body. This is your home that you live in for your whole life.
Yep.
Like that's mad. Do you feel like men have that sort of same pressure, or is it always just like be muscly?
Yeah, there's definitely been trends with guys. I'd say it didn't used to be as much of a thing, and it started to, I would say, to get worse. So I would say like the 90s and the early sort of 2000s, it was very much about being like, I said this to you the other day, as you said, a big steroid user, and that the big was the look. Like a lot of the guys who went to the gym then, it was about being as big as you possibly could. And it started to change to be less like that, to still be very muscular, but to have a leaner sort of physique. And yeah, you definitely, when I started going to the gym, it wasn't like a normal thing for a 17-year-old lad. Everyone was playing football or a certain sport or whatever else. There was not many people in the gym lifting weights, versus it's very common for guys now. And that had a huge influence from social media. And there's also really young lads that I've seen from like 13, 14 starting to take steroids, and that's definitely influenced from what they're seeing online as well. And it's the same, I would say, what you see with women who are jumping on these fad diets or starting to like. It's
like the reverse, isn't it? But at the end of the day, what your goal is takes time. Like building muscle takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
So you've on the one end of the spectrum, you've got guys wanting to hit the I want muscle and I want it now button, hence steroids. And on the other side, you've got women that, I want to lose all this weight and I want to lose it now.
Yeah.
Hence,
and
fad
you
diet.
can empathize on both sides. You know what I mean? It's crazy, but that's been a sort of a trend with men. But I definitely would say how much it affects guys is maybe it is having a bigger impact nowadays. But 10, 20 years ago, I don't think it was men to women. It was not even close in terms of the.
I feel like we're in sort of the space now where we're creating better things for generations to come. Like never have my daughter's generation, their generation is seeing women lift weights to be strong. Like it is so normal for her to see mum throwing around a barbell. And at what point in time has that ever been the case where a woman is doing something because of the way her body feels and how she performs, rather than, I'm not doing it to build a muscular look. I'm doing it to be strong. I'm doing it for performance. I'm doing it to be athletic.
Yeah.
And that's starting a really different narrative, but it is simultaneous with,
Mm-hmm.
all these filters and all of that stuff. So it's like a great thing on one hand and
there's pros and cons to both sides of it. I mean, I remember putting on Instagram stories about 4, 5, 6 months ago, and it's still like every time I go in there, it can actually be like this. There's 5 squat racks in my gym, and most of the time when I go in now, they're all filled by women.
But is that because of the bubble butt trend?
I mean, they're like squatting, they're deadlifting, they're hip thrusting, they're doing chin ups. So they're getting after it. There's some of the ladies in that gym are training hard. Yeah, and I've gone up to a bunch of them and complimented them on how hard they train, because it's inspiring. Like they get after it, and it's great to see. I find it like a very attractive quality in somebody that can push themselves like that as well.
Yeah.
But it's very different. That was not the norm even 10 years ago, even 5 years ago.
We're making a change.
But yeah, that was a very extreme example with Victoria Beckham. And I think, you've always got to try and understand, is she doing that because that's how she wants to live her healthiest life and feel successful with a diet? Or is she doing that because it's driven by something else?
Yeah. And everyone's version of, a healthy body, mind, soul, and a healthy relationship with food will look slightly different as well. And that's where it's, you can't just blanket, because my initial response was like, well, I would never eat that way. That's insane. And your response was like, what if she likes it?
Yeah.
Fair. It's a fair point.
I've probably eaten the same breakfast. It's changed slightly, but probably for 10, 12 years.
What is your breakfast?
At this moment in time, it's
1 million eggs.
six poached eggs, avocado, tomato, and sometimes I'll have a piece of toast or two.
6 eggs, that's wild.
Yeah. But before that, I used to just have scrambled eggs with less yolks, and I always get my blood tests done. And actually, since I started having whole eggs, and this isn't the same for everyone, but my good cholesterol went up. So
that's been a thing in the media. Are eggs good for you? Are eggs bad for you? Who knows?
All foods can react differently to different people. I get blood work every sort of 6 months, so I can curate my diet off the back of that. But yeah, I've literally eaten I've eaten that breakfast nearly for a decade, and I enjoy it. For me, it's a tasty breakfast. And
you don't have to make a decision each morning. That's just what I have. It's there.
Yeah, and so lunch and dinner definitely deviate and change rounds. I actually started doing HelloFresh about a year ago, and that's been really good just for getting a different dinner every day, instead of just maybe having your go-tos that you have throughout the week. But yeah, but for the breakfast side of things, just autopilot, and it's an enjoyable meal to me.
And that's healthy for you.
Yeah. We got a little bit of a study here. So this is half UK adults have an unhealthy relationship with food. 44% of UK adults say that they have an unhealthy relationship with food. Of those surveyed, 51% of women felt they had an unhealthy relationship with food, compared to 36% of men who felt the same.
I actually thought that would be higher.
I thought that would be a lot higher for women. Yeah, maybe 44% for everyone. Yeah, even still, I guess it's, again, what people are determining as an unhealthy relationship with food.
Because some people will be thinking that is an eating disorder, and other people will be thinking, I shouldn't be smashing back that whole pizza when I didn't want it.
Yeah.
And they are very different things. And people do get confused, disordered eating versus eating disorders.
Yeah, very different.
Very different.
I know when I was coaching men and women, one of the questions I would ask is, how many diets have you tried before? Can you just list me off as many as that you've done? And with like women, it would be Atkins, low carb, keto, paleo, 5-2, slim fat, just a list would go on and on. And like, how often do you do these? Like 5-6 times a year. And it was like a list. And then I'd like speak to guys, how many diets have you tried in the past? Well, I've done some chicken and rice and keto, maybe I've done that for a little bit. And like, but that's it. Like, this is just so with the women I was speaking with, long list of diets that they've tried to lose weight. Guys that I've spoken to are very different. So I just even think that has a massive impact on your relationship with food.
Oh, huge.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is, that women have the longest list and men have a very short list?
I think the pressure is on women from a much younger age. And I think that is changing. The pressure is now starting to come on guys as well with this, what we just talked about. But it's definitely been on women from a much younger age with the magazines, the TV shows, the films, how women are perceived in those places. Like you can even still just go into the shops now and see a magazine and it's like, this celebrity lost 8 pounds and this and, or like how this celebrity lost 18 pounds in 2 weeks and like what you can do too. And then you go and read it and it's like, drink lemon water and don't eat for 2 weeks. Be
miserable and hungry.
Yeah.
And not feeling very great.
No, not at all. Or take something that's basically a laxative. It's just that is happening or my belief from what I've seen is happening to women and has been happening to women from a young age for a very, very long time.
Yeah, I mean, it's everywhere. It's mainstream media, isn't it? And now it's not just on your magazine rack in your local news agents. Like, it's online. You can't get away from it. Does that differ from men's magazines? I can't say I've noticed.
Yeah, men's magazines are, again, you're looking at like your He-Mans from a young age, your Hercules. You're looking at these like superhero physiques that are all about being muscular and strong and powerful. And then, you've got your magazines of like men's health. You've got these guys, and I'm not saying all of them are, but like a lot of them have taken performance enhancing drugs and are just like ripped to death. And you'll have stuff like Hugh Jackman, like the Wolverine workout. It's like how he got ready for Wolverine in 8 weeks. And it's like, no one is looking like Wolverine in 8 weeks. You know what I mean? It's just, so there's a lot of that pushed on as well. And, even like Chris Hemsworth, just on the when he first done 4, he was huge. Like he looked like he'd just got on a time machine for flipping 12 weeks to have put the amount of muscle on that he is. And yet does that give the same sort of message to guys? Oh, that this man's a hero. He's a superhero. He's got all this muscle and he's got girls around him. And it's, I think that same sort of pressures do get put on guys, and that is the messaging towards them as well. And it does definitely have an influence and an impact.
It is really interesting because you sort of mentioned the aesthetic of like big muscles.
Yeah.
But everything else you mentioned was a physical attribute, powerful and strong. And I think that's a very different narrative to women. I think obviously there's pressure on men to be powerful and strong, and that's something in its own right.
Yeah.
But you don't get that with like women's magazines. It's not about what our bodies can do. It is only about what our bodies look like.
Yep.
And I'm so happy that narrative is starting to change. But in my opinion, it's not changing quick enough. And one of my favorite quotes will always be that, my body is not an ornament. It's about what I can do with my body.
Yeah.
And that's what that difference between the male and the female is really very much about what a man can do and very much about what a woman can look like. And I'm not there for it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree somewhat. I do feel like with some of the guys as well, though, like it is about like what you can look like. Yeah, because especially a lot of the guys that I followed and watched on YouTube, and as I grew up, like they did start to develop some, heavily obsessions with macros, and then they built their social medias off being lean and shredded all the time. So then they had this perception of, I have to stay this low body fat all the time.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, if you are natural as a guy and you're a low body fat percentage, your hormones crash. So your testosterone crashes, guys get erectile dysfunction. It like really, your appetite's through the roof. There's a real cost to doing that. And that can lead some people to taking performance enhancing drugs. Oh, well, if I can stay this low body fat and just take some performance enhancing drugs, and I can stay low body fat and have all the benefits. And so, you know, and that's again for them to look a certain way online. That's a much smaller percentage of guys than it is for what you've said about how women want to look, how that message is. But again, it's still there, and there's pros and cons and there's negatives to all of it. And I think talking about it and people becoming more aware about it is a healthy conversation to have.
Because that it just creates an unhealthy relationship with the way that you eat and the way that you perceive food and the habits that you create around that, all chasing a certain look.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah. I've seen people, those type of people who I've been out with, you know, we've ordered a pizza and literally because they want to have pizza and they're in a social situation, but they very much care about their bodies, and they're like asking for some napkins so they can dab the pizza before they eat it, just to get any extra oil or fat off it. And yeah, you know, but you kind of understand it a little bit because their livelihood is made off of how they look to a degree. So yeah.
Eat the pizza.
Any last words then, Kel? Like what would you say to anyone who's maybe, you know, that list of 11 that we've lifted off and they've gone, I am tick, 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 tick. You know, where do people start if they feel like they have an unhealthy relationship with food, or even if they just want to improve their overall relationship with food?
I mean, speak to someone that you can trust. And that's really important because there are, unfortunately, people in this industry that are only in it to take your money. And that it just is the case, and it's not regulated as heavily as it should be. But, you know, if you're speaking to someone that is taking you through a consultation and they are saying, it's actually not right for you to work with us, that's a really positive sign because they're not leaving you high and dry. They are saying you need to speak to someone who is qualified in what you need. And that's really important. And we don't work with everybody. So it's really important that people don't take you on for something that they're not qualified to deal with. You know, most coaches, most nutritionists aren't qualified to help you with an eating disorder. You need to go and see a therapist, a specialist with eating disorders. And it's finding that line of like, do you have disordered eating habits, which many people do, or do you have an eating disorder? And that consultation process is really, really important. So speak to someone and ask for help and see what they say and how you feel about what they say. Because if you have an active eating disorder and a coach is taking you on, they're probably not the right person for you.
Yeah, I would really, really agree with that. And when we're looking at that person that we trust, it might have to be somebody that you don't know, but go and do your homework so you can actually see that looks like you can trust that person. And normally a great way of doing that is if there are a bunch of struggles that you feel like you're having with food, go and try and find a coach or a professional that has got lots of experience and has shown repeated results with somebody who if they've got those problems, and then being able to get multiple people that look like you to see success. I would be very wary of going to, because some of the worst people to influence our relationship with food can be parents and friends.
Yes.
And I would just be very wary, even though you may trust those people. You know, our parents can sometimes push some of the worst eating habits and you know, beliefs onto us in terms of food. So sometimes it is going away. You know, we are also lucky that we've got Google at our fingertips nowadays. And
unlucky in some ways because
there's a lot of charlatans out there.
And just, you know, so much information and you don't know what's true and what's not.
Yeah. But it's worth, if this is something that's repeatedly bothering you on a day-to-day basis, it is worth going and doing your due diligence and doing your homework to find somebody that can help and start to move you in a more healthy direction with your relationship with food.
Yeah, and just being ready to take action. You know, it doesn't have to be the perfect time. You don't have to be in the most perfect scenario because your life isn't going to be perfect forever.
Yeah.
So deciding to take action at an imperfect time is the perfect time to take action. So, you know, if it's the imperfect time now, perfect. Like go and like do your research and ask for help. Because if this has bothered you for like, you know, even months is too long. But most people we speak with, it is years and decades and the majority of your life. You know, that's no life to live. Like make the change. You are worth making that change, and you can make the change if you speak to the right people.
Yeah, awesome. Do your homework, make the change. Let's go.
Make the change.